I gotta figure out how to use this. Hello. Last year we just yelled. We didn't have audio visual.
Closer.
Closer?
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, there we go. Hi, and welcome to our session on editing. This is for those of you who wanted to know what a gerund is. You may be doomed to be disappointed unless you ask at the end. What we're about here today is how to get the most out of you as an author or you as an editor in your relationship with your opposite party. So Craig Martelle actually set this up. I don't know if he asked my co-conspirators here, but he didn't ask me, so it was kind of a surprise. So thankfully, he had some questions that he thought we would start with. But the first thing I'm going to do is introduce myself. I'm Lynne Stiegler. I have been editing for LMBPN. I'm Michael Anderle and Craig Martelle's specific author. And for those of you who don't know, LMBPN publishes about a book a week, so we do a lot of editing. I have a co-author who's in South Africa, and she and I both each did over 1 million words in September. So that's kind of the volume that we go through, which may explain my message in the 20Books Facebook page where I said, anybody who's an editor and wants to come talk to me, please come talk to me. So anyway, so that's what I do. And then we have Ellen Campbell.
Hi, I'm Ellen Campbell. I am also a freelance editor. I did some editing for LMBPN early on. I did the first 17 of Michael's books, but I had the luxury of doing them after the fact, not against a production schedule. I'm currently affiliated with Keystroke Medium, a great podcast if you're interested, and that's me. I'm just me. There you go.
I'm Rebecca Moesta. I've been in the publishing world for about 40 years now. I started out editing college papers and progressed to books and progressed to writing books, and then was juggling writing and editing, and I've been a freelance editor for about 20 years along with being an author. Oh, and I edit everything that my husband Kevin J. Anderson writes. Well, all of the long form.
Okay, so I think our first question was, can we best work with I'm going to do this from the editor's side, or actually I'm going to do this from the author's side. How is it best for authors to work with editors? So, can you guys? Sure.
I think the first thing that you need to know is that you work with your editor, and it's a partnership. I mean, you're working together. Your editor's not there to correct you and make you look bad. There's nothing in that for them. You need to feel like you're part of the relationship. And if you have questions, you can't be afraid to ask. You need to know, if you don't know why they made that change and you don't like the change, find out why. Don't be afraid to ask. You have to be friends, or if not friends, at least partners, and be able to communicate.
What was the question? Oh. I'm not wearing my glasses. What was the question exactly?
It was, how can an author best work with their editor?
First of all, if you're an author, you have to be willing to be edited.
Yes.
I know that sounds obvious, but I've known some authors whose words are priceless and golden, and not one can be changed. And in that case, an editor may not be right for you. And certainly a publisher is probably not right for you. You probably won't go indie at that point. You're probably not going to go with LMNVP because they're probably going to want to sand off a few rough corners. But also know that, as Ellen said, we're not here to make you look bad. We're here to catch the things that will make you look bad if you get published that way. So we're here to spare you some red faces and embarrassment and kind of catch the stuff that you didn't. As an author, I don't ever want to publish something that's not edited. I am one of the best editors I know. I'm sure you guys are awesome, but I would never just be my own editor. I cannot catch everything. I know what I think is supposed to be there. That's not always what lands on the page. So I need backups. I need these people to help me not look bad, because I was working so hard on the book. Sometimes I thought I put something and I didn't, or I added something and never followed up on it, and it's just dangling out there. And I need people to catch it.
I'd like to add to that. We're tying our name to your book. So it's in our best interest for you to be as good as you possibly can be. So we are on your team.
I'd go even farther than that. We're not only on your team, it is our job to make you shine as an author. It's not our job to say, this is crap. It's, or anything other of the comments that I've heard editors have given to people. It's our job to make you the best you can be. We work very hard to maintain your voice throughout the books while not letting you commit things that will have people saying in your review, did this person get past 5th grade? So, but the bottom line is, it is your book. And so whatever we send back to you, you accept it, you decline it, you do whatever you want with it, because it is ultimately your book.
That's a very important comment, because sometimes authors will get very hurt by comments, not realizing that we're saying, okay, this is the way you can do this. Or if this is just your personal style, you could disregard this and just do these comments. But you are kind of the god of your book. And ultimately, you get to decide which things to keep and which not to keep.
One of the things I was in business, I was a database programmer and a CFO and a whole bunch of other things, but one of the things that I learned was I wanted to be the answer, not the question. So if I ever went to my boss with a question, I also came with answers. And so one of the things I do with Craig Martelle is I will say, hey, I don't think you meant this, what about this? And then he goes back and he rewrites something probably completely different. But he said, if I did not put in that, how about this? He wouldn't have gotten to the thing that he ultimately put in. So we are very much a partnership, and we should be with our editors, authors.
And most professional authors are that way. They do like to have a suggestion, even knowing they don't have to accept the suggestion. It might give them a jumping off point, because they'll say, no, that's not right because of this that happens later, and then they'll go, oh, that's the answer, and get their own answer to it.
The next thing we're going to tackle today is how can an author make their editor's life easier and get more from a relationship? And by that we don't mean have the book pre-edited before you give it to us, but there are many things that you can do to get the most out of what you give to us, or pay the least for what you give to us, because it's in your best interest to not have us doing things that you could have done had you wanted to. So,
well, to start with, you need to know what kind of edit you want. Don't walk in and say, okay, here, edit my book. And I edit your book, and I do a combined line and copy, and I smooth it out, and it looks really good, and you wanted a developmental edit. Well, I don't do developmental editing. Find out what kind of editing you need, and then look for an editor.
Yeah, if you just need proofing, you probably don't want to hire an independent editor who's very well versed in all parts of the industry, and who does developmental edits or line edits. You need to know ahead of time what you want. I need to know ahead of time, have you had somebody else edit it? Because often I get a book from another editor who has charged them like $5,000, and it's completely sloppy. Now, sometimes that means it was a developmental editor, but I still want to know if somebody's been at this book before I have. Also, if you've got really super specialized lingo or something that you've developed, it's good to let us know ahead of time. just so, well, we'll probably make a style sheet anyway for you, but sometimes I'll go halfway through marking certain things and querying them only to find out by the end of the book, yes, that's the way it will be every time, and then I have to go back and erase all those other questions, but it would have been nice to know ahead of time that this is a peculiar type of special usage.
Further from what my compadres here have said, I would also say that one of the things you could do for yourself the best, as I've said, LMBPN has very fast turnaround times. That does not mean that you should stint on you, the author, should stint on your end. My recommendation to all my authors is that you put your book down for 5 days or so and then go back through it. Because you're going to catch a lot of things that you missed the first time because you're blind to it. You know, you've put all those words down on paper, it's in your head, etc. Give yourself a break from it and then go back through it. The more you can clean up on your own, clarify, etc., the fewer mistakes we'll make or the fewer comments we'll have to make in doing your edit. I actually started out editing for Bain Books, and I started out as a copy editor. And I was apparently very good at figuring out that the waggling of the alien's left hind flipper it indicated negation and keeping it consistent all the way through the book. It would have helped me if the author had told me up front that was in fact their signal for negation rather than letting me find it out. I figured it out pretty quickly. But nevertheless, if you have special things, as Rebecca said, that you want done throughout the book, or a special spelling of something that we're going to think is a typo, please let us know up front.
Also, I taught for many years, even while I was editing, as a substitute teacher, and I was once in a middle grades classroom, and a student wadded up a piece of paper and threw it up in the air and let it land on the floor and just left it there. I said, go pick that up. And they said, that's what janitors are for. I said, it is not your job to make more work for the janitor. The janitor already has work to do. And the same thing for your editors. You don't go, oh, the editor will catch that. I don't have to be careful. Just like you said, please make it as good as you possibly can manage to make it before it comes into us.
Let me just make one quick. My quick comment to that is, when an author gives me something, especially a new author, that they've clearly not gone through, I call it, I have to clear out the underbrush first before I can see the trees, so that I can prune them properly and make your book the best it can be. The less underbrush I have to clear, the more likely I am to shape your trees correctly. So.
And bottom line, the quote that I provide you is going to be based on the sample edit that I do, and the more I have to do, the more I'm going to charge you to do it.
How do you decide if an editor is right for you? Is our next question.
If you have a good rapport through email and you feel comfortable talking to them, they might be the editor that you want to work with. But you've got to get a sample edit. You've got to get a sense of whether or not that's a person that you can work with. You know, does their style match your style? Are you good together? Have you seen any of this editor's other work? Do you like what they've done for other people? You know, it's just like any other relationship. You've got to make sure that you click on several levels to get the most out of it.
Yeah, you need to know that there's somebody you can trust, and recommendations are probably the first line of defense there, and a sample edit, which I'm embarrassed to say I don't do, is another way to find that out. A lot of editors will do 5 or 10 pages as a sample just so you can see what they do.
What about genre?
Absolutely.
Yes, it's really important that, go ahead.
Yeah, you need to be familiar with the genre like I can do. Science fiction, fantasy, action, adventure, military SF. There are a whole bunch that I can do. But there are certain types of romances and stuff that I am just not as practiced at doing, and there will probably be better people for you who will give you more appropriate critique.
I also think if you have an author that you like, the way their books are shaped, you can ask them. And authors, actually, since I'm married to one, I can say this, they love to get emails from fans. And they probably will tell you who, if it's not in the book, they'll probably tell you who their editor is, if you really like what that person did.
Yeah, so try to pick somebody whose genre is the same as yours, and then ask them who edited their work.
Even within LMBPN, we have a number of universes, and my co-editor, Judah Rain, she takes some of them and I take the other ones. And so it just depends. And I'm probably better on the sci-fi and urban fantasy. And then she does the other stuff. So you really...
That's a big genre.
Yeah, it is a big, well, it's mostly what we do too, but we have other universes that lean, I can only say they lean more in other directions.
Yeah.
So she has, like, she does the Orosarian universe and the Zoo universe. So for those of you who are familiar with LMBPN's products, and I do Michael Angerly's and Craig Martelle's work, and a lot of the new authors I'll take on because they often need developmental editing. So it just depends on what you as an editor's strength is, and you as an editor, never be afraid to say, no, that isn't my wheelhouse. You really probably should find someone else, and if you as the editor know somebody else, push them their way. That person will do the same for you.
Yeah, your book can be absolutely brilliant, but if it's hardcore horror, I'm going to hate your book, so I'm not going to be very good for you.
Yes. I'm going to say this because Michael Angerly said no one ever quotes him. He said, wait, I have to get this right. Hang on.
Good thing they're recording this.
I know, right? So he can say that I actually, wait, I have to do this. I'm going to give you that.
And any editor will give you a referral if they're actually a real editor and they work in the industry and they want everybody to succeed. They will give you that referral you're looking for.
Michael's quote is, editors can make a solid author amazing and an amazing author solid, which is not something that you want. So if you're a fabulous storyteller and the editor is smoothing you down for the market, don't go, run away fast.
But be sure you're a fabulous author.
Yes. And then another question is, what does the healthy relationship look like? We've kind of talked about that a little. Do you have comments, or shall I? You look like you have comments.
I have a very congenial relationship with most of my clients. We're very comfortable. I apparently have a reputation as being slightly terrifying. I'm not sure why, because I am like the kindest. I agonize over how can I tell you that this is so bad that it made me cry. When I say these things. So yeah, for me it's all about the relationship, and my relationships with my authors are friendly. Some of them are more formal than others. Some of them are, name calling type of relationships. But it's something that you build, and that's the way it should be.
In a good professional relationship, the goal should always be the best book possible, and the way you get there is to talk about the book and the writing, not about you're this, you're that, you're lazy, there should never be any personalization or name calling or anything like that. If that's what you get, that's not a healthy relationship, and you should probably find somebody else.
Go.
Abusive name calling. There should never be abusive name calling.
Okay. There should never be harsh comments either. Well, unless you've indicated somehow that you're into BDSM. Your editor should be there to help you, not to denigrate you. So if you start getting comments like, essentially boiling down to this is crap, or your plot sucks, or whatever it is that you're getting from your editor, that editor needs to get smacked upside the head in some form, possibly monetarily, but B, get away from them, because editors should be helpful to you. They should be helping you polish your craft. But you also need to know what you're getting into. Like, I will often meet, I will generally meet with my new authors up front and say, are there things you don't like? What is it that you're going to want me to avoid? I hate semicolons, then that author gives me a book with 6 semicolons in it. I hate the comma then construction, and then the entire book pretty much has to be turned into comma then, because that's the way she wrote it. But sometimes, and you can ask your author what they don't like. Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't, until you've gone through a book or two together. But I always look at my relationship with them as hopefully a long-term thing, and with LMBPN, sometimes they don't have a choice, so oh well. But I'm going to do my very darndest as your editor to make your books look good and make sure that we have a congenial relationship going forward. And I'm always going to explain why I did what I did. So our poor fan, we do fanfic, and we have to warn the poor fans that their books are going to come back awash in a sea of red, dripping red. But I'm going to always provide the comments as to why I did what I did. And I've had more people tell me that was the most useful lesson. Those were the most useful lessons they got, were from those developmental edits that were done in their fanfic. And some of them have gone on to be LMBPN authors, and I won't embarrass the one who's sitting in this room who took a picture of me earlier to post. No, I won't do that.
I fully admit to being a complete wimp when it comes to being edited, because it is very hard to have your work done, especially something you slaved over and you thought you made something clear, and then they're asking you these questions and you thought you had already dealt with that. And I have come away from editorial sessions with my first readers or editors in tears before. So I try not, as an editor, try not to put somebody in tears, because I know how hard it can be to face all of that rewriting or polishing you might need to do. But if somebody makes you feel even worse than that, run away. Because it can be hard to pick yourself up off the floor if somebody's way too harsh on you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, don't ever let anybody treat you badly.
Ever.
Never.
Do you two have any things you want to say about beyond what we've talked about?
Probably. It may come up if people ask questions.
Then let's let people ask questions.
Oh, that's right. We have to give up.
We have to give up a mic.
Yeah. All right, I have a question.
I'm going to bring it back here.
Oh, okay. Get out of the camera, right? Yeah. Might break it. All right, so I have a question. I have been edited, but not harshly. It was one of those moments where I wasn't necessarily in tears, but it meant a lot more work. It was kind of a developmental thing, and it was like, oh my goodness, how am I gonna, and the next thing results in a phone call to my publisher saying I'm gonna have to turn this trilogy into 4 books. I gotta split book 2 into 3. I gotta write a bunch of filler that doesn't come across as filler. It's gotta be quality. It meant like, there goes my timeline, right? So I've been there, but I've learned from it, and like, obviously we all still have egos to some degree, but I think I'm a lot past that point. And so my question is, when I'm beginning a relationship with a new editor, which I'm in the process of doing right now, because my last one disappeared off the face of the earth. I hope he's still alive. I mean, literally, no response, no calls, just gone. So I want to, what's the best way for me to approach this new editor and say, look, I want to give you carte blanche. I want you to, without scaring them, and, making it sound like I'm going to give you a lot of work, right? Like, I mean, do I just say, charge me what you think is fair? But I want to be a better writer. Can I work with an editor almost like you would with a coach, as a coach? Say, look, I know I have run-on sentences. I know I'm a long-winded SOB. Please, can you help make me a better writer? Not just the commas and the misspellings and the punctuation, but help me be a better writer, and maybe explain what you've done so that I can learn from that, maybe start to integrate it, process it, and then start to emulate it myself naturally over time. Is that possible, or is that going to scare the crap out of an editor?
No, that comes into the whole, when you meet the editor, when you send that introductory email, you say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking to build a relationship. I'm looking to learn from this relationship. This is where I am. This is where I want to be. And is this something that we can do together?
Awesome.
And what you're talking about there would be called a developmental edit.
Really? See, I've always understood that to mean like the plot.
No, no.
Okay.
No. I'm not much for formal terms, but that's what I've heard called a developmental edit. So, and I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads. So, I mean nodding heads. There we go. Let's be precise.
A developmental edit is a big picture edit, and it can include some line editing, and then it can talk about your overall style, and it can be things like, you need to move this chapter much later because you're giving this away. And so there are whole bunches of big picture things that go on in a developmental edit, and if there's something that you need to adjust about your style, there could be, I mean, I have certain reading selections that I give to people who have trouble writing dialogue, for example. So I'll say, here, read these paragraphs on how to construct this, and then I'll have totally different areas that I comment on too, or I'll say, you tend to have the talking head syndrome where you'll have 5 minutes of action and then 5 chapters of people talking about the action. That's,
Okay.
I'll make comments like that. So make sure before you tell your editor that's the type of thing your editor can handle. Is
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
So you'd said that if you have a lot of specific jargon or like oddly specific things with aliens or something like that you should tell your editor about that ahead of time. But what if one of the things that you're trying to find out is whether that's going to be clear to the reader? Because I mean, as a reader myself, I prefer the stories where, they don't just tell you something like you figure it out from context. So the trick of making it clear enough from context. Like, do I just say like, hey, there are some things, like, is there some way to do both of those without making your editor's life too hard?
first reader.
Oh, well, first of all, you're not trying to surprise your editor, so telling them up front is not going to ruin anything.
Well, I guess not from the perspective of like spoilers, but just like, is it clear enough? Because if you already know something, like, are you going to be able to say like, oh yeah,
sure.
this comes across clearly?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Okay. Thanks.
As a relatively new author and speaking to a lot of relatively new authors, I find that, and it was true for me when I started writing, I didn't know what I didn't know when I needed to approach an editor. I didn't know the right questions to ask, all of those things. For people who are new, what are, say, the 3 things that can educate them enough to be able to identify an editor who is right for them, so they don't repeat the mistakes I made?
You're looking for an editor for the first time and you don't know what you don't know. The very, very best thing you can do for yourself is get some referrals.
And if you're not in a position to get referrals and you're just kind of going to the national organization's webpage, say, I'm a new author, I don't know what I don't know. You'll get a tenor of who the person is from their emails or their communications with you, and say, and ask them. And most authors will do a little bit of a test edit for you, and then you can see, or at least they'll talk to you about their style and what they do. And if they're if they're truly an author who's used to, an editor who's used to working with new authors, they'll be able to tell you, and this is what I can do for a new author. And it's not, so in other words, just be totally upfront. I don't know what I don't know. You could just say it just like that. And I need your help. You know, and that's not a carte blanche to say, screw me over monetarily. That is in fact that's being upfront, and it's starting to establish a relationship, in my humble opinion. So.
And don't be afraid to query more than one editor.
No, absolutely.
Thank you.
So, I didn't want to bother other people, just because I'm short. So when I started my series, I didn't really know anything about editors, and so I kind of found one I found them off of Readsy, but I didn't really know them. And the first 3 books, I had 3 different editors because each one wasn't quite right for me, and I feel like those books I don't feel are as good as they could be. By the 4th book, I found an amazing editor, and I've done 3 books with her. So I really love working with her, and I love how my books come out when I'm done with her. What do people think about possibly having their backlist re-edited once they find an editor that they love? Like, how does the editor feel about that?
I think you're looking at 3 editors here who've done exactly that. So, Ellen and I were just talking about that before this. She and I have both worked on Michelangelo's Arthurian Gambit series, and I came in after her and did a fairly extensive edit, and someone could come in after me and do a fairly extensive edit. It's never perfect. So, and by the way, if you're looking for perfection from an editor, you gotta get it. Because we're human too, and everybody has different opinions, and you'll see different things at different times. But back to that, I think it's a wondrous thing to do. It's only how much you can afford. If you can afford to have it done, it's gonna be much better for you, for your series. And if you can write a new prologue or something and kind of release it as version 2.0 so you can get that Amazon new release tag, as opposed to having it just sit out there and nobody know that you've done this for yourself. Yes, it's new and improved. So,
Thank you.
In the context of line editing or copy editing, what are some guidelines or a checklist that some of you may have to help preserve the voice of the work you're editing?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So you want to make sure you preserve the voice of the author that you're editing.
Oh, what do I do?
Yeah, what do you do to prevent changing their voice as a line editor?
It's almost an intuitive feel for their voice that you're picking up. You know, you read their words and you get a feel for their flow. I've edited a couple of people with very, very strong voices, and I've been a reader my whole life. Voice is something that I'm really attuned to. So it's just one of those things. Is there? Yeah.
If there's a really specific part to your style that you're wanting to preserve, it would be good to say, I use no punctuation, or some sort of thing like that will tip the editor off, because otherwise we will try to make the whole thing more clear. And the big thing about editing is not all editing is like somebody who edits nonfiction edits completely differently from a fiction editor. A fiction editor is supposed to preserve voice. That's part of our job. We are not the authors. I have had copy editors who thought they were the author and they rewrote every paragraph and they got fired. We know that we're not the author and that this is your book and we are looking to preserve your style.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm sure too. Thank you. Is there a difference between editors when it comes to voice and punctuation. These are two things I'm having trouble with. I write what I call close third, and my editor calls, "Oh my God, you can't do this." Also, I'm old, and when I was in school, I was taught that before you put "to" to mean also at the end of a sentence, there was a comma. I have 3,000 edits in my book that says, no, that's not true anymore. Now, my question is, can I save myself 3,000 edits by hunting for another editor who went to school when I did? Or, I mean, is that, that Chicago Manual of Style, you've got to follow Rule 1.1.23.17a or whatever, sort of used across the board?
I can tell you that in LMBPN, my favorite line is, "We don't need no stinking commas." Seriously, it's unless you really want to pause, you wouldn't want a comma there. I do, however, feel your pain. Let me tell you what I do in edit, which is mark one eyeball, pass one, Grammarly, pass two, ignoring 3/4 of what they say, but it forces me back through the manuscript again, and I see more things. And third is the word, or Scrivener, or whoever you're using, spell and grammar check. And so Grammarly will try to tell me always that I need that comma before two.
Grammarly.
Sometimes you'll love Grammarly.
I will love Grammarly.
It probably wants you to put in all those prepositional phrase commas and all those compound sentence commas and all those things. It's going to be your best friend. But it is not a substitute for an editor, however, because you have to know when to ignore it, which is, as I say, a good portion of the time. But if that's your style, you just tell your editor that I prefer the old style. I don't know how many of you read John Brazy. John Brazy likes Chicago Manual style edits. He does. And so he and I have agreed that I won't edit for him because I don't like that particular stuff. That's not true. I do edit for him. But I do not, it tends to be his looser stuff that goes in with the rest of the LMBPN universe. It's not his milk fiction that, that LMBPN doesn't publish. So if he's doing it in our style to go along with our authors, then yes, I edit our way for him. Otherwise, it's Chicago Manual style. I found this out when I edited his Nebula Award-winning short novella last year, Weaponized Math, and then he said, "You don't do Chicago Manual style, do you?" And I said, So.
Well, I use Chicago Manual of Style, but I ignore half of it in the case of commas, because what commas are for is clarity.
Yes.
They're not, if you really are going to say, "He walked in to," that you don't really need a comma. If he walked in to is, he also walked in the door. You really don't need a comma for understandability.
No, you don't.
And just like when you have independent clauses, she nodded and he cleared his throat. That's so short, you're not going to misunderstand anything. You don't need an extra comma in that sentence. I use the Oxford comma for lists because very, very often there are different ways to read it if you leave out that final comma. And so for clarity, we always put in that comma, and we agree on this.
We agree.
That's a comma you need. But really, read it through in your head and think how a person would read it. And if you need that comma there to tell people how to read the sentence, how to interpret it, then go right ahead with the comma. If not, you're probably going to free up your readers some and not make them trip so often.
I can say that I, as an editor, when I'm editing, I'm reading your work in my head so that I know what it sounds like to me. And if I don't think it needs a pause there, as I say, a comma is a pause. So if I don't think it needs a comma, I'm not going to put it in.
I would go one step further than reading it to yourself in your head. I would read it aloud.
I do that.
But I don't put commas for like my brother Mark
Oh, no, that is an old time convention, no offense, but yeah, my brother, comma, George, comma, blah, 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 it's like, no, get rid of those. Everybody, they're really not needed anymore. And if you're writing, pardon the term, pulp fiction, you're writing for people to get away in their heads.
Yeah.
They're not looking for great literature, they're speed reading through this. And so it's just gonna be a for them. So, we are at the end. If anybody has any more questions, we've got a grace period. If they don't, thank you for your attention. We're wandering around, so if you think of a question later, please feel free to come up and ask us.